Courtney is already down in LA, and he stayed behind. He goes down like 2 weeks later, and then he checks himself into the rehab. But before he goes, he buys this gun with his good friend and another one she's got wrapped around her finger. But when Gant overhears that other friend talking with Courtney and hears the conversation, like, I want you to go get the shotgun. Like, how would she know it's there? She's been gone for 2 weeks. How does she know there's a shotgun hidden in the next room? And he bought that, and he bought a smaller gauge because there had been burglars, supposedly, but the smaller gauge, in case he shot it in the house, he didn't want buckshot would go through all the walls.
Yeah.
If he had birdshot, it would be more contained into one room. And so actually I learned from that, and that's how I load my shotgun. First one's birdshot, and then we get serious after that. And
exactly. That's how a lot.
How does she know?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, how does she know there was a shotgun in the house?
Exactly. That was my big point. I love it that you pointed that out. What is she doing? Talking to Kurt's friend behind his back or something? Like, the only person who could have told her was the guy that was with him, and he claims that he had no contact with her. So how does she know that there's even a shotgun there?
Exactly. You know, when I was a detective, you would get that gut feeling that, like, I'm onto something here, and the red flags would come up, and it's like, I got to run down this lead and this lead and this lead. And those weren't run down. Those weren't explored because there was no detective doing follow-up on it. The original investigation was done by very competent officers, but everybody went in there with the thing that it's suicide. Well,
it's not the officer's job to follow leads. It would be a detective's job if they were investigating it as a homicide. Okay, I understand.
Right. I, as a captain, I even went to the cold case detective and suggested some of the stuff I'm telling you. And I'm no longer the homicide. I had been the homicide commander somewhere in there, but I went back to him as an outside captain and said, might want to look at this. And he's, oh, no, it's over. It's done.
Welcome to the Young Jerks. We've got a great show tonight. Got two awesome special guests. I'm really excited about tonight. My name is Mike Crawford. This is the Young Jerks. Make sure you follow, subscribe to us. We just played video from American Spy Fox. It's a brand new latest video from him with a retired Seattle police captain, Neil Lowe, talking about the Kurt Cobain case, which is going to be coming up on 30 years. Two people, when I think about Kurt Cobain and the case, it goes way back to Tom Grant, the private detective, and this other guy who's a friend of the show, who's been on the show in the past, Charlie, American Spy Fox. I'm just going to bring them both up right now. Welcome back to the show, Charlie, American Spy Fox. And let's bring up Detective Private Investigator Tom Grant. Welcome, guys.
Hi, Mike. Hi, Charles. How you doing?
Good. Thanks for having us.
I'm excited. This is thank you, Charlie, for putting this all together and for your dedication to this story and what you've been doing. It's amazing that we can play this tonight and talk about this.
Absolutely.
Well, tell us about, like, where do you want to kick off? Both of you, I guess. I mean, do we want to talk about, I think that's it, Captain Neil Lowe, right?
Well, I think a lot of people have heard from me quite frequently. Maybe perhaps Tom should start this off.
Yeah, that's fine. First of all, I want everybody to understand there's no glitch on the screen or anything. I'm microphone only. I'm not video, so you're just going to hear my voice and not be able to see my ugly face.
Oh, we'll put your face up too, though.
Oh, I don't like that picture.
We got it up on the screen right now.
You know, that's like 8 or 9 years old. But I just, anyhow, whatever. I like the illustration of Charles. That was great.
Can you see the gray hairs coming out my sides, man? This Cobain case has literally given me gray hair.
Your hair is turning red, not gray.
On the sides, on the temples, I'm getting some grays coming in.
Oh, well. Well, I want to sort of just give a real brief explanation about how investigations go and why this thing makes so many twists and turns and changes over a period of time. Investigations usually take twists and turns. And you begin by focusing and running down your best lead first and then your next. And that can result in a change of approach and strategy and tactics and methods of approach that are adjusted, along the way. Some items of potential evidence that seemed important at one time get discarded and replaced by newer, better evidence until you eventually find the right resolution to the case. So directions that we were going and things that we were looking at really heavy at one point are typical to any investigation, especially a homicide investigation. This happens, and things that seemed important at one time are replaced by things that are more important. And that's going to continue to happen until we get to the end of this. And Charlie has begun something here that is going to lead us down that road. And I think it's going to be resolved in time. We're going to take it slow and easy, and I'm looking at weeks or months. But this was just an amazing interview. When you really listen closely to this man, and he was a captain. I don't know how many people really understand the rank of captain on a police department. It's an upper echelon of people that are up there. They call it the brass, the higher up, the high people on the totem pole, I guess you'd say, when in management. And those people don't get all the information that the patrol officers get, that the detectives get, and that doesn't always reach them. So we haven't heard about Captain Lowe for all these years because, for one thing, he didn't really, until he watched the film, he didn't have that much interest in this, and he figured it was resolved. He trusted the detectives, even though he said he had red flags, and he discussed those red flags with them years and years ago. He's been there for 50 years on the Seattle Police Department. And you can tell by watching him in his interview with Charles how authentic he is and how ethical he is. And I spoke with him for an hour and a half the other day, and he's just the most down-to-earth, truthful human being I've ever met in a long time, and especially coming from the Seattle Police Department. And he is very honest about all the background stuff there that's gone on over the years. So that will be discussed at another time, but I would just like to focus on Charlie's interview with him and kind of go down the list of things that were brought up, not necessarily in order, because I may have gotten them out of order. But
I'd like to ask you a question about the whole thing too, Tom. Like, did you ever expect that you would see something like this from a former captain of the Seattle Police Department, that, somebody like Charlie would find him and get him on YouTube? And did you ever expect something like this would happen?
I always hoped it would happen, because I figured, there were, especially after all these many years, 30 years, there were probably brand new people on the Seattle Police Department who joined, and they were heavy Cobain fans at that time, and then grew through the ranks over time. And eventually, after retiring, they were willing to talk about it. And maybe I would have gotten a phone call, or maybe Charlie would have gotten a phone call. And so I thought that was a good possibility. But I'll tell you, Charlie sent me a screenshot of a message between him and Captain Lowe the other day. And it said, "Sure, I'd love to talk to Tom." Now that just swept me off my feet. And I thought there would never be a day in my life that I would ever hear something like that from
From the
somebody
Seattle Police Department.
on the Seattle Police Department, much less a 50-year veteran at the rank of captain with an impeccable background and with the impeccable credentials. You know, I mean, this guy cannot be critiqued by anybody with any intelligence and put down or made fun of or criticized or whatever. If he gets any criticism over this stuff, it's going to be from people that just aren't thinking things through and don't want to think things through. I'll occasionally have to grab some water here because I'm an old man and I'm on a medication that dries my mouth. So if I have to pause.
Yeah, that's what I grabbed. But before we started, I had to grab a cup and put some fluids in it. When you talk a lot, you gotta, you know, wet your whistle, as they say.
Right. So
one thing I wanted to add, can I add something just?
Oh, absolutely.
Of course, I don't want to put any words in Captain Lowe's mouth, but just a little bit I've talked to him and got to know him. He's an officer that does not like bad detectives. He doesn't like, I mean, he worked in internal affairs. Okay. If for anybody who doesn't know, that would be internal affairs would be the guy that, you know, who will judge the judges, right? Well, Captain Lowe, like, he makes sure that the officers are doing their job correctly. And I get the feeling from him that he does not like detectives who cut corners.
I wanted to bring up that same point, but you said it so much better that I would have ended up saying it. So that I appreciate that, Charles. That was great. Okay, you want me to continue on with
your list? Let's go through what you have on this.
We can probably do this audio real quick on this next point. He brought up Callie's note. He called it the note in the house or on the stairs, and he says it's his house. Why wouldn't he have a right to bring it being his house? So,
right.
I mean, I'd like to play this recording that I did with Sergeant Kirkland. I'm sorry, Detective Kirkland. He wasn't a sergeant at the time, but he was working with Cameron on the case. And I had been told by my document examiners when I sent them a copy of that note that was on the stairs from Callie, I had been told by them when they reached their final conclusion that it was written by a woman with a strong personality. It went on, basically describing Courtney, but not saying her name. And of course, when I talked to them on the phone, they outright said, yeah, they think Courtney wrote that note that was on the stairs. I questioned that in my mind at first because that wasn't logical. I mean, Callie was up here. Why, if she wanted the note put there, why wouldn't she just call Callie, tell him what to write, and have him put it on the stairs? Why would she fly up there in the middle of the night to do that? And I eventually got Callie into my office, and I put the same size paper on the desk, and I gave him a black felt tip pen. And I said, can you write, to the best of your memory, what you wrote on that note on the stairs? And he sat there and he kind of wrote it out, and it was like 70% accurate, which would be normal for doing something off your own memory. But I could see as he was doing it and watching him, and as it was coming out, he wrote that letter on the stairs. Nobody else did. And that's also the most logical thing. I had no doubt that he wrote it actually from the beginning, but I did have questions as to why he wrote it and what it was all about. Rosemary Carroll, when I talked to her about it, she agreed with me. She believed it was written for me to find. And listen to this interview with Detective Kirkland. I also want you to know this is about two things. First of all, it's about the attitude from the detectives at that time, the bad attitude, and the sloppy job they were doing. And it's also about my education about the qualifications of handwriting experts and how accurate they actually are. So let me, well, where did I,
Hey Tom, before you play that, can I ask you? So you do think that Callie wrote it, but Courtney dictated it to him?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I can't imagine him coming up with
I
that
agree with
wording
that.
on his own. Yeah. Okay, you ready?
And you're playing. This is explain what you're going to try to play right now.
My conversation with Detective Kirkland. Um, I made this call to him when my handwriting experts first concluded that they thought Courtney had written that letter. And I thought that was important. If she had written that letter, then that was really important. Turned out later, within a week or two after this conversation, that's when I found out from getting Callie, yeah, from getting Callie into my office that I determined completely 100% no, he wrote that note. And then I had to call Kirkland back up and say, I got to tell you, I was wrong about that. I tested it myself. I told my my document examiners what my conclusion was. One of them was stubborn and refused to agree with me. The other one finally did agree with me and told me I was right. So I had to, after this conversation, I had another one that's tape recorded, but we won't play that here today, where I called up and I was, it was kind of a sense of embarrassment for me. And it really, I'm sure, lowered my degree of confidence with the Seattle Police Department because I made such a big deal about this handwriting letter, this letter on the stairs. So I have a bone to pick with handwriting examiners, and I don't believe that it's an accurate science. And they can tell how old letters are sometimes, and they can tell how old ink is and things like that. But telling me or anybody that the handwriting style and all that shows that this is a man or a woman or their personality type or anything, I'm convinced that's a bunch of baloney. So here we go. AFT 701.
And then they asked me to send them a fax of the note that Callie had given me, the sample in here, which I did. And they came back about a half an hour later and said they have very strong opinions that this was not written by the same person.
Well, we have submitted the writings we have to our crime lab. And I don't care if Callie writes a note or Courtney writes a note. That has nothing to do. I mean, it has nothing to do with our investigation. If Kurt Cobain wrote the suicide note and the suicide note in Rome, that's all I care about.
You're not interested in the fact that a note shows up at the house, supposedly written by Callie. Turns out it wasn't written by Callie, and there's a possibility it was written by Courtney, and Courtney was in Los Angeles at the time.
How can you say when the note was written?
I was at the house the night before, and the note wasn't there. It was there the next night. If you're not interested, I don't care, but I'm just giving you the information I
Right,
have.
and I understand that. But I think that your investigation is into things that our investigation doesn't apply to. Where, I mean, maybe you're concerned with what he was doing, where he was, and all that. And the only thing, I'll tell you, Tom, truthfully, normally our homicide unit does not even respond to suicide. If the patrol officer thinks it's a suicide and feels good about it, then he notifies the medical examiner's office, or ME goes out there, they look at the body. If they're comfortable with it, suicide, we don't even respond. Now we're involved in this thing because it is Kurt Cobain.
Okay.
Wow.
Seems like they had no interest, huh?
Yeah, I mean, they made their conclusion. They didn't want anybody sticking their nose into this and making them look bad, for one thing. But to say that for him to say he didn't care about this note or a note written by Courtney or note written by Callie or anybody else, well, I mean, yeah, you don't care. You don't care. You've written this off, and you're not going back, no matter what comes up. You don't care, you know. Now, I didn't have a chance to play this for Captain Lowe. Just a second. But we discussed things like this on the phone, and he's absolutely disgusted about things like this.
You're going to make him work. He might have to do something.
Right. They hate
You
that.
know?
Well, you know,
My
I don't
God,
know.
I just
I
want
don't know
this
what
to be
he'll do with
over.
it. All I know is this guy's got integrity, and he has a history with the department of watching over, you know, as a supervisor, as a commander. And when he sees and hears things like that, especially if it was within his own division, he detests it. And he just expressed, he told me a lot of things that went on in that department that I'll let him talk about when he wants to talk about. But I just really appreciated his attitude and his openness about what went on. And we're going to hear some pretty good things to come, I think.
Yeah, let me add to that when I first heard about Captain Lowe, I thought it was so unbelievable that I didn't even check into it. It was actually, I believe, and I'm sure she'll correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was a patron of my channel named Danielle Baker. About a year and a half ago or so, maybe even 2 years ago, she sent me this link and she said, "Hey, this Seattle officer is writing a book or wrote a book, and it seems like he really thinks, you know, the Kurt Cobain case was not solved." That and I'm like thinking to myself, this is too good to be true. Like there's no way this is true. But you know, it stuck in the back of my mind, and then about a week later, I finally looked into it myself, and it actually took me quite a while to get Captain Lowe to talk to me. So I'm very happy that he's now comfortable talking about this publicly. I did want to give credit to, if it was Danielle, I wanted to give credit to her. I think she may have been the first person to ever talk about it.
Yeah. And that's the way these things work. You know, I mean, there's so many things that I've received, leads that I've received through email or messages or whatever, that have, you know, taught me things that once I followed that lead, that, oh, wow, I didn't know that. And that's added to my reports and my notes and things over the years. And if it wasn't for, you know, Cobain fans out there that are staying on top of this and reading and looking at everything they can find, I certainly wouldn't know a lot of what I've learned, you know. And in this case,
it really is a collaborative effort.
Yes, definitely. In this particular case, you know, if it wasn't for you, Charles, we wouldn't probably have known about Captain Lowe. I think I mentioned this in an email to you. Until either he or I were 6 feet under, because we're about the same age. And I mean, I might live to be 90 or 95 years old, but you just never know, you know? So
yeah,
it's so important that this came out in time, you know. If nothing else were to follow, I'll tell you, this was such a powerful interview in itself, all by itself. And I think after I talked to him and got a feel for his personality and his attitude about this whole thing, I think there's going to be a lot more interviews. I hope he does another one with you. In fact, hopefully all the interviews will be with you, because
I'm sure at some point I'm actually hoping at some point that somebody like, you know, Rolling Stone interviews him. That would be terrific.
That's going to happen. I mean, I don't think
I believe it's going to happen. I think a lot of people out there right now were like me originally. I said, this sounds too good to be true, so I didn't pay attention to it. I don't think it's really sunk in with everybody yet, like how prestigious this guy is, how much influence he has. He could actually help to make a change. He really could.
Yeah. I don't think since it, you know, he really has a lot more to look at, and as he gets more into the case and learns even more, and listen to some of these recordings like we just played from or Detective Kirkland, who I'm sure he remembers, I think he's going to want to be even more helpful. So
Yeah,
I think there's really good things ahead for this.
I want to add that if Captain Lowe does do another interview with me, for you Kristen Pfaff fans, we will be talking a little bit about Kristen Pfaff. He was involved in that as well. So that'll be in, hopefully in the very near future. And again, I don't want to put any words in his mouth, so I'm not going to say anything. But second interview, Kristen will come into the conversation more.
And I know we've talked a little bit about things probably we can't say about that, but is there any kind of hints you can give anyone? Is there anything else? Because I'm interested in that, Charlie. I imagine a lot of your fans, American Spy Fox, are very interested in that Kristen Pfaff part.
Yeah, well, he had told me that I'm not sure exactly what his position was in 1994, but he did say that he went to Pfaff's apartment the day after, and he was in some kind of position where he would go to these death scenes and make sure they didn't miss anything, kind of like comb over the place again, make sure they didn't miss anything. And they did miss something, and it was her journals. And he did, for the investigation, he did take those. So that'll be something that I'll talk about and let him explain. But, what I'm trying to say is he's the guy who got Kristen Pfaff's journals originally.
Yeah. And he did agree to do another interview towards the end of this first one with you. So
I can't wait for that.
He also told me that he looks forward to speaking with me some more. So
yeah.
I think this is a good combination of events here, and it's gonna lead to places that I don't think most people are really expecting.
Yeah, and Tom can talk to him in a way that I can't. I mean, Tom worked as an officer. He has law enforcement background. I have none of that, right? And they're about the same age. So I think you guys are maybe within a couple years of each other. So naturally, they're going to be able to talk about things and understand each other in a way that I wouldn't.
Yeah, you're right. I've over all of these years, of course, I get emails and messages from people. And I say, Tom, why don't you arrest her? Why don't you do something? Why don't you open the case? And the average public doesn't even understand the basics of something like that. A private investigator doesn't go out there and arrest and prosecute people. I had no more power as a private investigator as an 18-year-old girl right out of high school. So I can only feed information to the authorities and investigate, privately things, and then try to get things done based on what I found. But so the point that Charlie is sort of making is that unless you are a police officer or have been a police officer or even been part of the legal system, the court system, there's a lot that the average person just doesn't understand when they think in terms of strategy and what's important, what's not important, and that type of thing. So I thank you, Charles. That really cleared a lot of things up for the listeners, I think, by you discussing that.
Hey, one thing that got me excited about that interview was when I did ask him, I didn't know if you guys were going to talk about this or not, so I'll bring it up. I did ask him if he thought a change would ever be made. And, I was kind of expecting the worst. I was expecting him to say, nah, I don't think so. But he didn't. He said, with some outside pressure, sure, it gave me hope, I guess. It made me feel better. All this isn't in vain. This whole group, the Facebook groups, everybody who continues to research the Cobain case that's keeping it alive. if we all just quit, then definitely a change wouldn't be made, right? Like, so yeah, I'm glad that he reacted that way.
I think he said something like, yeah, if a groundswell occurs here and some pressures applied on the Seattle Police Department, he said, it could happen. And he said, and this is the key part, I really hope it does happen, So
yeah.
He and for those out there listening, you might think that, well, he can just go back to the Seattle Police Department, talk to his old friends or people that he supervised and tell them to do this or tell them to do that. And it doesn't work that way after you've retired.
Political.
Yeah, it's very political. Even when he was on the department, it's very political. And he did have other chiefs that came and went that were above him. And no matter what he would say to another chief about how something may or may not have been done properly, it's up to the chief to decide whether they want to follow through on that. The other thing about being a captain or being a chief of police, too, that some people don't realize, we're really focused on this Cobain case. I am, because I got stuck with it, and I followed through with what I felt I had to do. And then as I got to the point where I just really lost the energy that I needed to do the type of thing that Charlie's doing, Charlie kind of carried the ball and has kept people interested in this case. And now this happened. And
like a relay race.
If Charlie wouldn't have carried the ball for a while there, I never would have heard about this. Nobody else may have ever heard about it. Charles, of course, got notified by somebody that there was this book out there, but it's a fictionalized book. Most people reading that book, first of all, he doesn't write for Cobain fans. He writes a lot of different types of books for people that like to read novels and mystery things. So the average reader of his picking up that book would never have any idea that it was about the Cobain case until recently, when he told us now publicly that it was about the Cobain case. So that's why we didn't hear about it. And whether it was Danielle or someone else, whoever it was that picked up on it and sent that link, I just, I'm trying to help the audience to understand why this took so long. That book was written 2 or 3 years ago, at least. But
because he did not promote it as a Cobain thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I think that's why it slipped past everybody.
If that cover would have had Cobain's name on the cover,
right?
It would have.
Hey,
been,
I'd like to read one of the. Sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to read one of the endorsements on. Obviously, when people write books, other people review them. So there's this lady named Anne Bremner. If you buy the book, by the way, I believe Captain Lowe said it was restocked on Amazon. We can put in the description his PayPal. You can buy a book directly from him if you'd like, if you're within the U.S. Anne Bremner was a prosecuting attorney, and she had actually been on the Nancy Grace show as sort of expert, you know how they have guests come on, legal experts and stuff. And she read and reviewed the book. This is what she said. Excellent reading. I'd love to get this defendant in the courtroom and put her butt on the stand. She has a lot of explaining to do. And I'm not going to answer this question, but I asked Captain Lowe, is Anne Bremner referring to the character in the book, Kim Darling, or is she referring to who? And you know what he said.
Yeah.
So here you have a prosecuting attorney saying, I'd love to get her on the stand, Yeah.
And a leading, very well known, she appears on TV shows all the time. This isn't just some single person with a little law office somewhere. This is a very credible attorney.
Absolutely. Charlie, you mentioned Rolling Stone earlier. you know, it occurred to me thinking about the politics of the police department, how things are run. I think there's also a politics in the media, and especially with
Oh yeah.
Courtney Love's influence in the past. I think it's funny. So many things I speak on this. It comes from your show, man. I just watch your show and then I just absorb it. It's all from you, but it's like so much in the past. I think she had that power to kind of stomp on Tom, radio.
Yeah.
But now no one's afraid. Do you think Rolling Stone and the rest will actually jump on this? And if they like, why haven't they yet? Like you put it out a few weeks ago. Like, why hasn't this broken news? Like I've seen stuff that
It's interesting. Rolling Stone has actually linked, I think, at least 3 of my videos in their articles, but they've never written about me or given me credit or anything, but they sure don't mind using my videos. I think if Captain Lowe, I think the whole thing could go mainstream. I really do. I think people would take him much more seriously because of his credentials, because of his background. I think a lot of people are going to say, hey, wait a second, maybe there is something to this. And it might take some time, but slowly, as Tom said, maybe over the next few weeks or months, maybe even a year or two. I do believe that, well, look, 30th anniversary is coming up in April, and that's when the mainstream media starts writing about Cobain. Hopefully, one of these people are going to get in touch with Captain Lowe or Tom or whoever, If you're asking me if I believe it'll happen, yes, I do believe it'll happen.
Let me follow up on that topic there for a second. With 30 years on this thing almost, I've had really highs and really lows, obviously, and that's normal. Even, if I was a detective working for a police department and you're following a lead that you think is going to really be hot and go somewhere, and you get there and it's kind of a dead end and you're disappointed. But so there's been things probably 100 times or more over 30 years now where, okay, we got this now, and I get all excited and somebody's come forward, somebody willing to speak. And then, they tell me, yeah, but I don't want my name used. This is between me and you. Well, if anybody knew how much information I have from really credible sources that were on the inside, Isaiah Silva, I can mention his name. I won't tell you what he told me, but I worked for them for a while. They called me and I met with the family and him, and I stayed overnight actually the first night, or no, I think it was a couple nights after that to help protect his ex-wife and their daughter. But
this was right during that incident with the mother-in-law and that whole thing.
Yeah, when he first came out, I'm the one that got him to file the police report, and then I took him to file a what do you call this order?
Protection order.
Restraining order.
Yeah, I took him there and helped him get that done at an office in downtown Los Angeles. And I went up to the house with him and his mother and his dad, and we went through the house that he and Francis lived in, and I took photographs all in and out throughout that house. Of course, I would never release those photographs without his permission, and there's really no need to. It's not important, and I wouldn't want to embarrass Francis. This has nothing to do with Kurt Cobain's death, but it's a lot of great gossip stuff.
Tom, was this you took photographs after they had broke down the door, the window? Is that what you're talking about?
After the kidnap attempt, I actually took a photograph of the back glass door that they broke and went in, and they allowed me to take photographs everywhere throughout the house. But there's pieces of information that I've never told anybody because the person that gave me that information asked me not to use their name. So I could make up anything if I was willing to just say an unknown source or an unnamed source or a close family friend or, what a lot of book writers do. And
which
you never
the mainstream media does all the time.
Yeah, yeah. So if I can't use the person's name of my source, if I can't use my source's name, I'm not going to tell the story. What I've told you about the Isaiah Silva thing is, well, it was already made public. It was written about in the media, and Page Six, and different various local things. I think it was discussed briefly on TMZ, but so it's not a secret. I didn't just tell you a secret. I've told you a little bit more about the photographs, but that's no big deal because I don't plan on releasing those.
Do you guys think that he'll ever speak? Like, I've never heard Isaiah Silva speak
Oh, that's a
since
whole
that.
different thing. That kind of branches off into a whole different thing about the kidnapping and all that. I'd be more than happy to come back and talk about that a little bit, but it turned into a court case, and they have other people. They lived a long ways away from where I was, so it wasn't very likely that I was going to continue being the person that they were dealing with on that for a long time. It would be just difficult. They needed to get somebody closer, and they did have an attorney close by, so they put a team together down there. But I wanted to get back to what Charlie was talking about. When these things happen and you think, wow, this is going to kick something off, it always goes much slower than I expected it to go. I thought, oh, I'm going to get calls on this now. I'm going to get people in the media calling me, wanting to talk to me about this and that and everything. And it doesn't happen for a while. I'm thinking, wow, I thought that was something big, But then, a few weeks later, you get the first call. And then after you do, like even a broadcast radio interview or something, other people pick up on it and it starts trailing off. And before long, with something like this, I use the word, and I don't mean to be hyperbolic, what's the word for that?
Hyperbolic.
That's it. Thank you, Charlie. I don't mean to exaggerate or anything, but I use the word explode. I think this is going to explode. And I don't think it's going to explode tomorrow, or maybe not next week, maybe not next month, but wait for it. Just wait for it. Do you want to go back to the interview? And I've made some notes about some points of the interview that you guys had.
Yes, let's go back to the interview.
Sure, yeah. Let's do that.
One thing I really enjoyed was his comment talking about the position of Kurt when he was when he allegedly killed himself. He made the comment, sitting up. Who sits up that way? You remember that, Charles?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, we've looked at the diagrams and that, and we know I believe from Dr. Hartshorn's comments and all that we got from him on tape, that he was sitting up when that was done. But Captain Lowe talked about, normally men, they don't like to just sit up like that, on the floor with their legs on the floor and no back support. They'd want to be with something behind their back. And so he says, sitting up, who sits up that way? Well, somebody sits up that way when there's somebody holding them up that way and another person putting things in position. That's who sits up that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always referred back to the bar stool in the room. It'd have been so much easier to put the butt of a gun on the floor and sit on a bar stool, and just lean forward. But he made that's a great point that he makes. The way it happened would be the most likely way it would happen if other people were doing it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Manipulating him.
As far as the heroin blood level, I don't think he's done enough research yet into that, and I'm sure he will be. And he hasn't seen some of the things and talked to some of the people. I mean, Dr. Wecht made that so clear in the film, and there's so many other people that are knowledgeable about that. And I mean, watch a heroin user shoot up on YouTube You can find it on YouTube. I know I've seen it on YouTube. And man, they put that needle and they start pushing the plunger, and within a few seconds, their head goes back and they go, ah, like that. And then they start nodding off. I mean, there's no time for Kurt to put away the needles and put the caps back on the needles and roll his sleeves down. And I think Captain Lowe even said, button his sleeves and things like that. So, and I mean, the most important thing, really, I don't know that he's really looked at the video that you talked about a little bit, Charlie, about me stopping the video every time Szynski would say something and then I would respond to it.
Oh, yeah.
Detective Szynski proved that this had to have been a murder, and he didn't even realize it during that interview he did back in 2014. Yeah. Everything he said.
With your Tom, with your permission, I'd like to actually put that video on my channel so more people can see it and they'll know exactly what you're talking about.
Nobody ever has to ask my permission to copy anything that I've done or written or anything. I've always tried to make that clear, but I probably never said that to you, Charles. But I've always tried to make it clear to anyone. I don't copyright anything. I will never file a YouTube claim about anybody that uses anything from mine, even if they're using it for critical purposes. I don't care.
Yeah, but go ahead, because Captain Lowe mentioned Szynski in our interview. He didn't say Szynski's name. He just said the cold case investigator.
Yeah, but that's who he was talking about. And
yeah, he was talking about Szynski.
Yeah, since he's named so many other names, on the record now with you, I'm sure if we were talking or if you were talking to him and you mentioned that, I mean, I shouldn't say I'm sure, but I feel that he'd probably say, "Oh yeah, that was Szynski,"
Yeah.
But when you say go ahead, I'm not really prepared.
You were talking about the video you made where Szynski was proving that it was murder, and you added commentary to explain, to add more context.
Yeah, I was basically
to his interview,
correcting what he was saying and being critical of what he was saying, and basically showing how everything he said didn't make any sense, including he started going on about as if he was in the room watching this whole thing. Well, I believe Kurt did this, and then I believe Kurt did that, and then I believe he went over and he sat down on the floor, and then he loaded the shotgun with 3 shells, and and talking like that, like he was there. He got that from reading Charles Cross's
book.
Like that.
Yeah, you're right. It literally says the same thing in Charles Cross's book.
I mean, is that how you investigate or reinvestigate, even a review?
He read the book that Courtney Love commissioned and then said that was the case. Like,
yeah. And especially when he just, outwardly said it, and then he loaded the shotgun with 3 shells. Okay, wait a second, Detective Szynski, what are the 3 shells for? If you're trying to say that he sat down to load the shotgun so he could kill himself, why did he load it with 3 shells? And I've always kind of, I don't mean to make light of this, but it's like, what was he going to go duck hunting after that?
Right.
So, if people haven't watched that interview with Detective Szynski, we'll make sure that it gets online. I think I looked for it the other day, and the entire thing wasn't there, but I know it's in my computer, and we can get it. I can send it to Charlie maybe, and he can put it on his channel.
Love it.
Captain Lowe said, I told the cold case investigator that there were leads he needed to follow up on. He needed to interview Courtney Love, and he just looked at me and said, nope. And he even said to me, if I was his captain at that time, his butt would have done it. Yeah.
And people need to understand too. Again, they're going to say, well, why didn't he do this, or why didn't he do that? He was there. He was a captain. Why didn't he make him do it? It just doesn't work that way in a police department. You can make suggestions to somebody else's employees, another captain's employee, but you can't take over and say, no, you've got to do that. That's an order. Now, if he would have been captain of homicide at the time, then he could have, he would make those decisions.
Right. He could have made him do it, but it just goes to prove that Chazinski had no interest in being 100% for sure. He was just, reiterating the original investigator's conclusion. He wasn't going to go out of his way to even investigate.
And he embellished on all of that to the point that it was so extreme, he dug a deep hole that the Seattle Police Department will never get out of, because he proved by the comments that he made that Kurt Cobain could not have committed suicide. And yet, of course, he ended up his interview by saying, it was my decision. It was my, my place to make the decision. I forget how he said it. He said, I think I was the one to make the decision, and I concluded it was suicide. I haven't looked at that for a long time, so I may have gotten the wording wrong.
I got the feeling that he made up his mind before he even started. And as you pointed out, as I watched that interview, all I think about is Charles Cross's book. I'm like, this guy literally read that book. Anybody who reads Heavier Than Heaven and then watches Chazinski's interview, you're like, oh my God, he's repeating what the author said.
Exactly. Yeah. And he brags about the fact that he read books in his research, to make a final determination as a cold case detective on this. In his research, he read a lot of books. There you go.
Yeah. And for anyone who doesn't know, Courtney Love paid Charles Cross to write Heavier Than Heaven. So it's like, oh my God.
Sounds like propaganda.
Sorry. Go on, Tom. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. I want input from everybody. And Mike, feel free to jump in here anytime.
Well, I think I want to talk more about the Neil Lowe interview. I think you got some more points on that.
Oh, that's all I want to talk about is the Neil Lowe.
There's other questions too. People keep bringing up Callie. They want you to talk about Callie tonight, but let's talk about Neil Lowe interview.
Yeah, let's see.
I agree with what Captain Lowe said. We know Callie wrote the note, but anybody who reads that note knows that a man would not talk to another man like that.
Right.
It's a woman complaining to her husband. Yeah.
The handwriting was the man's, but I really believe Courtney dictated to Callie basically what to write on that note. And as I had explained to Kirkland, I was in the house the night before and that note wasn't there. The next night it was there, and it just obviously appeared to me to have been put there for me to find. And Courtney's own attorney, Rosemary Carroll, agreed with that. That was the first thing she said is, yeah, I think she wanted you to find that, Something I enjoyed about what Charles said. He says, I can see myself believing it was a suicide. And my response to that is, me too. If I would have been even a patrolman on the Seattle Police Department at that time, and if I was working off of a note that was, or a missing persons report that had been filed saying that he bought a shotgun and was suicidal, and I arrived there, I would have thought it was a suicide. The difference is I was an LA County Sheriff's deputy. Any dead body, even if it was somebody homeless found dead that maybe even froze to death in the middle of the night or whatever, when we responded to the scene of a dead body, no matter what we thought of the cause of death, our job was just to protect the scene, tape it off if we had to or whatever. If it was in a remote area, a lot of times we didn't have to keep the public away because they couldn't see it. But our job was to sit there and wait for homicide to get there and touch nothing. Don't walk around anything, do nothing, just wait. We'll be there. And sometimes I waited for homicide to arrive on a dead body case for 12 hours or more. So the fact that they still apparently allow the patrol officers to determine whether somebody died from a suicide or not is just, I still can't comprehend that. I can't comprehend it. They're not trained. They don't have the experience. That's not their job to look into all those details. And the best way to kill somebody is to make it look like a suicide. And a lot of people get away with it if they do a really good job of it. Over 99%, or I shouldn't say over, but close to 99% of all suicides, or I should say stage suicides, there's either drugs, alcohol, or the person is asleep. They're disabled completely when they're killed. And then after that, the gun, the weapon of whatever, it can be manipulated and put in whatever position the killer wants to put it in. So good grief, a patrol deputy arriving at the scene of a staged suicide, and they're allowed to decide for themselves whether it was a suicide or a staged suicide. That's just crazy. And that's
I just listened to that recording today when you emailed me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He said, Kirkland literally said, if the officer says it's a suicide, we don't even send homicide out. I was like, what? You're kidding.
Unreal.
How about Lowe saying the shotgun disappeared and somebody was trying to keep it for themselves?
Yeah,
and
that
all
was
this
crazy.
Stuff?
Auction. They wanted a souvenir to auction off, right?
Yeah, I had never heard that before. That's new to me, and I'm sure there's a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of things that I saw and experienced and witnessed that Captain Lowe didn't. And obviously, him and his position and being there before and after on that department, before and after Kurt had died, there's a lot of stuff obviously that I don't know about and that I wasn't aware of, and I learned a lot of some of that just the other day when I talked to him. So it's going to get really
great. Now you guys can put your puzzle pieces together and you can see more of the picture.
Yeah. We both enjoyed speaking with each other. It was, I got to tell you this. This is something that happened that was funny, Charles, because like I said, talking to somebody like this from Seattle Police Department with his stature, I just couldn't believe that he wanted to talk to me. And it took a while for me.
It's almost like Courtney Love wanting to talk to you, right?
Yeah. Well, I had that all the time, but not wanting to talk to me anymore, certainly, But
yeah.
So I had to wait for a few days to make the phone call to him, and I was kind of preparing things in my mind, if it didn't sound good, if it was going downhill, how I would react and all that, and what I would say and not say. And I was a little nervous about it, because this was really a big thing.
Yeah.
And I called him, and I think he also said, just leave a message. I think, Charles, from you told me I saw on that text he wrote to you, if he doesn't answer, just leave a message or whatever. So I was prepared for that too. But I was surprised he answered the phone. It sounded like he was driving at the time, and I heard some music or something in the background. And he says, hello. Didn't sound like the friendly Captain Lowe that I'd heard on your show.
I see.
Yeah. And then I hear I look at my phone and it says on hold. So meanwhile, he was turning the radio down and all that so he could hear better. Then he comes back and he says, hello. And I said, hi, Captain Lowe. This is Tom Grant. Click. It hung up.
Oh boy.
It hung up right after I said Tom Grant. And I went from, feeling way above the ground to feeling so, so.
You thought he hung up on you?
These are the highs and lows you go through with something like this. And I've had that, with other people from the Seattle Police Department stuff where they didn't want to talk to me. I've been hung up on other people too when they hear my name. And I thought now he's had time to think about it, and he's decided, no, I don't want to talk to him. People are telling me not to talk to him, whatever. And, I sat there for a few minutes just going, I was so down about this whole thing. And I thought, well, this isn't going to go anywhere, and then the phone rings and it's him. And he says,
Call
hi,
back.
did somebody from this number call me? I said, oh, hi, Captain Lowe. This is Tom Grant. And this time he said, oh, hi, Tom. And it began from there. And it was just, mutual conversation that we both enjoyed. And we both got so much out of it. I think he would say that too.
Phenomenal.
So I just thought that was funny. Hi, this is Tom Grant. Click.
Right. Yeah. I would have thought the same thing if it happened to me.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking for, the open marriage thing that he talked about. And you had an opinion on that, didn't you, Charles?
Yeah, I believe I said the open marriage was one-sided, but I had talked to the captain about this after our recorded chat, and he said, in the future when we record videos, I need to make it very clear when I'm talking about the real case and when I'm talking about, what I might write in a book, right?
The
So
fiction
because
version. Yeah.
we were kind of blurring the line between the real case and like maybe something that's going on in a book he wrote or he's writing. I think he has probably heard Courtney Love over the last, I would say, over the last 2 years, she has spun this narrative that her and Kurt, she's never come out and said they had an open marriage, but for example, in an interview, she said, oh, when Kurt was in Brazil, I encouraged him to sleep with a model. And the interviewer's like, oh, did he do it? And she's like, yeah, he did it. I think now Courtney is trying to spin this narrative that they were sort of in this open marriage so people won't hate her for all the cheating she did, just like she spun the suicide narrative after his death. So maybe Captain Lowe has heard something like that and assumed that they had an open marriage. But no, they did not have an open marriage. This is Courtney just making up more lies in very recent interviews. She's never said anything like that in all the years since Kurt's been dead up until the last year or two. So
I
for
agree.
anybody wondering about that, yeah,
And
it's not.
Yeah, and you know what?
Go
You
ahead,
can go
Mike.
back to Mary Lou Lord. Like, I don't want to bring her name into it because I've been friendly. I know her, and I don't think she wants to get involved in this stuff. But
No. I've talked to her.
the way he treated her, like she was not nice to other women around Kurt. Kristen, right? I mean, it's obvious, right?
Yeah,
Very covetous.
extremely
Yeah.
jealous and possessive. I mean, even the drug dealer, who apparently was a pretty little blonde, I never actually saw her, but she threw a rock. She bought drugs from her once, and I have her on tape talking about this. She bought drugs from her and then went around to the kitchen window and threw a rock through her window. And I think she was with Captain Palin too when they did that.
So yeah,
Courtney's thrown rocks through so many people's windows. My God, she would have, if she was a normal person, she'd have been in and out of jail her whole life.
She tried to light a woman on fire too, Kristen King. And Kristen King, by the way, called after that happened. And in fact, she was I met her later at an event, and she said, Tom, it's Kristen King. And it was the first time I saw her in person, but we had talked a lot by phone before she did her civil lawsuit against Courtney over that. And but I know the whole story there. I'll tell it real quick if you want to hear it. She went over to Jim
I know it, but the viewers don't. So yeah, let the viewers know.
I think at the time, if I get the names right now, like I said, it's been a while since I've looked at. His name was Jim Barber. Is that right?
Yeah. That was the boyfriend.
Right. Courtney was dating him at the time, and Kristen was just over there sleeping on some couch. I have a picture in my mind that it was like in the foyer of a house, sort of near the front door or whatever. and he was in his bedroom. She wasn't in his bedroom with him, but Courtney shows up and sees her sleeping there with a blanket over her, and starts beating on her and hitting on her. And I won't get into all the details because some of it involves private parts and stuff. But and Kristen gets up and starts running out the door. Courtney, Courtney. My interviewing skills are very rusty because I haven't done interviews for a long time.
I've said that before. I've said Courtney because you're like Kurt and Courtney. Courtney.
Well, I mean,
I've said that a million times.
Easy to do.
This whole interview, right from the beginning, I've realized it's been a long time since I've done this, and I'm very, very rusty at it. But so Kristen is running out the front door with the blanket around her, and Courtney grabs a bottle of whiskey and pours it, follows her, chasing her, and pours it on her on that blanket over her. And then there was a candle on something nearby, and Courtney grabbed that candle and threw it at the back of that blanket. It didn't light up, but obviously this was a woman trying to set somebody on fire. And
exactly,
if that would have happened in my area when I was a deputy sheriff, and if I would have handled the call, Courtney would have been arrested for attempted murder. I think that happened in Beverly Hills or some other city. And you know, my sergeant, after he read the report, maybe he would say, no, we're going to kick her loose. There's not enough here or whatever. But she would have been arrested by me as a patrol officer arriving at that call. She would have been arrested for attempted murder. And then it would all get sorted out from there, and the prosecutors and everybody else would make their decisions. That's the way it goes. A patrol officer can only do so much. But that was an attempted murder on the books. I mean, legally defined.
Tom, you know the worst part about that is Frances. She took Frances Bean to the house with her. Frances was like 11 or 12 years old, and she witnessed this.
Oh, really?
Frances talked about it on Instagram once.
Oh,
well, what did she say? What did she say about it?
She just said, you know, basically, my mom's nuts. She drugged me out in the middle of the night to go throw rocks through her ex-boyfriend's window. She found a woman there and tried to kill her.
Wow.
Like, it's very, it's not like we're not telling you something that hasn't been confirmed. Like Frances herself has talked about it. You know, imagine having that in your childhood memory, you know.
I'm still learning things here because I think, I mean, I spoke to Kristen a lot of times. We were on the phone on and off for actually months on and off. And she had a manager. She's a singer too. And she had a manager that was calling me on a regular basis. In fact, her manager showed up.
I was going to ask you, wasn't Jim Barber her manager at the time? Isn't that why she was there?
Could have been. Yeah.
Could have been. I don't know for sure. I think that I read Jim was helping her in some way, like some kind of business relationship.
Yeah. And Charles, see, you find out things that I don't find out because I mean, as much as people expect me to, I don't spend my life tracking down Courtney Love and making sure where she is and what she's doing and who she's with. So I find these things out from other people. And the reason I'm sure I didn't know that Frances, that I didn't know Frances was with her at that time. I don't imagine Kristen knew that Frances was there because all she was trying to do is save her life and get away from Courtney. Oh, and by the way, after she threw that candle, Kristen fell on the front lawn and was on her stomach and then on her back, and Courtney was still on top of her, pinching her and beating on her and stuff like that until she got up and got out of there.
Oh, yeah.
And she
wasn't she like pinching her like chest?
Yeah.
She was.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's really weird.
So she was so focused on just getting out of there and getting away. I doubt that she noticed that Frances was there.
Well, Frances was more than likely. I'm sure Courtney would have had a driver take them. You know, she's probably in the car, but still, you know, just imagine a person dragging their kid. that's the incident that led to Francis going to Kurt's mother, Wendy, the first time. That's why Courtney lost custody of Francis the first time. But I'm sure like Francis was probably in the car or something, but still.
Yeah.
Awful. I mean, she's got such a history of violence. That's the thing that I think a lot of the average people that don't follow this, they don't realize how many incidents of violence that she has, especially against women too.
Yeah. And you mentioned Mary Lou Lord. I mean, that was
Yeah.
one of the first that the public heard about.
And men.
Yeah, men too.
Yeah. Oh, and I think this came up, Charles, during your interview with Captain Lowe, and you mentioned something about seeing a video or whatever of Courtney yelling at Eric Erlandson.
Yes,
I'm not aware of that video, but I am aware of my eyes and my presence and my ears, and that a similar incident happened when I was with her in the Peninsula Hotel, and Eric was there. Actually, Eric came in while I was there talking to Courtney, and he just mumbled. Eric talks really low and really, really soft, and just mumbled, "You ought to go down and see your daughter."
It's real creepy. Yeah.
Yeah. Francis was a couple rooms down, and he just came in and said to Courtney, "You ought to go down and see your daughter." And Courtney just totally flipped out and started screaming, "Don't you ever talk to me like that. Don't you ever tell me what to do." And it didn't stop. I swear it didn't stop for half an hour to 45 minutes. There was no room for my conversation with Courtney. She was too involved with yelling at Eric. And even after he walked out the door, she followed him out the door and was yelling at the back of his head as he walked down the hallway.
And he just took it? He just took it?
She'd come back in the room and, pounced down on. She was sitting on a bed when we were talking most of the time, but before we could even get the conversation going again, she'd be up on her feet, running out the door to go yell at him some more. And literally, this carried on for somewhere between a half an hour and 45 minutes. It was just incredible. So
It's never ending. The stories that we hear about her, the stuff that she's done to people.
Just imagine Kurt living with that.
Awful. I mean, he had such a blessing and a curse. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to make it clear.
I think that's why he's getting divorced.
Yeah. I want to make something clear that I've said over the years several times. It's not a secret. When I talk about Courtney in those ways and point out things that she's done, I'm doing that with somebody who's an investigator and trying to get something done legally. I don't blame Kurt Cobain fans for hating her and saying really nasty things about her. From my perspective, that means nothing to me personally, and for the job that I've been trying to do for so long. I just say that she's mentally ill, and I really believe that. And to bring up Hank Harrison, I knew him really well too. He wasn't violent, but he only cared about fame and money and people getting attention from people and doing interviews and stuff. He came across very nice, and so a lot of people just thought of him as a friendly person to talk to. I had experiences that would take over an hour to go into with him, so I have a different opinion. But I will say that it doesn't fall far from the tree. And I think Courtney was born with some mental issues. And so I've even said, in a sense, I feel sorry for her. I'm sorry, Nirvana fans and Cobain fans, but I do feel sorry for her because I think she was born that way. And I think the fact that her father didn't treat her like a father should treat his daughter, even after Cobain's death, for him to come running to me and say, "Oh, we got to do a book together," and then the things he said in interviews about his own daughter publicly, her private life and all that, that's just not what a father is supposed to do. So in that sense, I
understand
sorry for her, and I believe she's mentally ill. I believe she's a psychopath. I believe she's a sociopath. And I had a psychiatrist actually call me and said, I read what you wrote about her, and I agree with you 100%. But you know, if a person is violent and if they're harming other people, they need to be taken off the street. They need to be put in jail or a facility or whatever to protect society. So in that sense, I still want to go after. I still want to have something done. I don't think she should get away with the things she's gotten away with, but that's because of her criminal activity and what she says and how she acts crazy and stuff like that. Kind of irrelevant to me because I think she is a lot.
It's important to establish a pattern of behavior, you know, and that's Kurt Cobain fans are the first to notice her patterns of behavior, you know, so that's why they dislike her, is because, you know, it's not like they're just hating on her because for no reason, you know, it's her action. Yeah.
And if I was younger, you know, when Cobain died, and if I was a Cobain fan or whoever it was that was I felt was murdered or whatever, I'd have the same feelings. You know, I'm not saying I'm better than anybody else. I'm older and I'm in a different position than the average Cobain fan, and so my look at this whole thing and my approach to it is different than, you know.
I know exactly how you feel, because
I think we all three of us feel
like
that way.
Maybe your generation. Well, look at Yoko Ono and John Lennon. I don't hate Yoko Ono, but people who grew up with the Beatles hate Yoko Ono.
Yeah.
Like I don't have any. I'm indifferent to her. You know, I don't care. So I completely understand what you're saying.
And especially about the mental illness and the upbringing, like with her father, and I mean, definitely, I talked to him too, and he's a character. I mean, there's something he was very nice, like you said, but it's all about him.
Her mom abandoned her too.
I want to ask you about that.
Hank. I don't think her mom was.
What do you think about the mom? Because the mom is a best-selling author. You don't hear much about her, even though she's kind of famous in her own right. What do you, both of you? That's what I want to know. What do you think? Was it just Hank, or was it the mom too?
Well, I spoke to her mother on the phone shortly for a short period of time, and she was very nice to me and sounded like a average sweet lady. So I couldn't really pick up any characteristic traits from that might have been passed on through DNA to Courtney. I heard that Courtney's grandmother, you know, made some very disparaging comments about Courtney, but there's not a whole lot there with her mom that I really have any insight to. Getting back to Hank Harrison, though, I caught him in so many lies every time we talked. And I'd say, well, wait, Hank, you just said this and then you said that. I'd call him on it. I remained friends with him, I mean, on a friendly basis, but I would call him out every time I catch him in a lie, including one night when he called me at about 2:00 in the morning and said, Courtney sent her goons after me and there's pit bulls attacking me. And we went on, and he was saying stuff that just was illogical in my brain. And I think what he was hoping I would do is post something right away or call the media or whatever. And coming from me saying, yeah, Courtney's even sending goons out to attack her father, you know, but I wasn't buying it. And before the end of the conversation, as I kept catching him in lies and things that were illogical, he eventually admitted to me that these were his dogs. They were his bulldog or pit bulls that were making all the noise and barking and all that. And, you know, in the background, it sounded really, really vicious, but they were his own dogs. And because I was asking him when he first called, I said, do you see men? Are there men standing around? What are men attacking you? Or let the pit bulls go? And, you know, he would just cross himself up every time I'd ask him a question. And I mean, that is where experience as a detective or a police officer you're always questioning people and they're always lying to you. You're always able to, you learn very fast how to pick the truth out of the fiction and boil it down to, what's real and what's not real. And so, gosh, with Hank, I don't think I even needed to have that skill. It was just so easy to cross him up. And unfortunately, there's just a lot of people just adore this guy, and
Yeah.
he really did a lot of damage to our attempts. I mean, there's other people too that kind of got in the way, really,
Right.
and were a thorn in the side of the Seattle Police Department, antagonizing them. That didn't help, but I don't know that we'd be in any better situation right now than we are anyhow, but it just was kind of frustrating to see all the stuff going on the sidelines that was really just getting in the way. Charlie, did we lose you?
Well, maybe we did for a second. Yeah, I think we might have lost him. He'll come back.
Yeah. Do you have a question, or you want me to?
Yeah,
bring up some
well,
other
one of the things I want to ask Charlie this too, so maybe I'll save that one, the Iggy Pop question.
Oh,
But
yeah.
let's go to, like, I'm sure there's more that you want to talk about Neil Lowe, or do you think we kind of got through all that?
I'm scrolling down my notes here. Well, I think I might have said this, but he's always, for people that are wondering why now, why all of a sudden after he retired after 50 years is he talking about this? He's always seen red flags with the Cobain case. He was convinced by people that worked underneath him, and as you're, again, a captain, a supervisor, a commander, you don't get all the information from the bottom as it filters up to the top. And when you're up at the top like that, you're getting information from a lot of different cases, from a lot of different sources. You're not focused on just Kurt Cobain's death, like I've had to be, and others that are, Cobain fans and people that are interested in the Cobain case. So, but it was interesting to hear him talk about the fact that he always had red flags, that he always, he went to talk to people at the time, even to say, well, do you think you ought to look at this? Do you think you ought to look at that? And nobody wanted to pay any attention to him. And since they weren't under his command at the time, they didn't really have to. So, and the reason it works that way in a sheriff's or police department too, and any business really where there's a hierarchy, you want to keep your people happy too. You don't want to constantly be on their back and telling them, no, do this, do that. I mean, it looks like that on TV a lot of times, but supervisors aren't really that nasty to people that work under them, and they don't yell at them. And it looks good in the movies, but it's not the way it really works at most police departments. So there was only so much he could do, and there was only so much he was learning about at the time. And then it was after he retired and he saw that film, he was learning some things that he'd never known or heard about before, and that created a larger interest, and kind of went from there until he started writing his book, which was one among many. I remember hearing about him before I realized he'd written books, and I was thinking, man, I'd love to talk to him and tell him, you've got a good book here. And then, within a couple of days, learned that he'd written several books long before this book came along, and he has others in the work. So he's a pretty established writer.
Going to be exciting. I hope that you both of you, Charlie and yourself, get to talk much more to him on the air. I want to hear it all.
Yeah. I know one thing that he said in the interview that I thought was funny. And by the way, he called me Gant every once in a while. That doesn't bother me. First of all, he didn't do it on purpose. It wasn't a way of belittling me or anything. He just didn't remember exactly my name. and unless you're on top of things every day, looking at reading and stuff like that, it's real easy to forget exactly the name of the person you're thinking of. So, but I thought it was interesting. He said Grant was also very careful not to cross her, but I think he was trying to get back at her in the film
Right.
for things that she said about me. Well, first of all, she didn't really say a whole lot about me. She kept as quiet as she could about me. She didn't want my name even being heard, or put out there anywhere. And so there was nothing for me to try to get back at her for. I understand him feeling that way because he didn't know the situation, but he hasn't heard all recorded calls that we've made between her and I. He hasn't heard me correct her and call her out on things. And he didn't know about the letter I wrote to her just 30 days after Kurt's body was found. Basically telling her I find things suspicious in this case and I'm going to continue working on it with or without your cooperation. That's in the case study manual, and which is on my website, a copy of that letter. And when I showed that letter to Rosemary Carroll, Courtney's attorney, she said, "Oh, she's going to be livid when she reads that." And that's actually the whole purpose of me writing that letter to her, is to first of all let her know I'm onto something here, and I'm not going to continue to be lied to. I'm going to look at this without being paid. I don't need your money to do this. And I expected a phone call because of the experience I had with watching her and listening to her yell at Eric Erlandson and other people too. She yelled at everybody that crossed her in the slightest sense. She just had an outrageous temper. She didn't with me. The one truthful thing that Hank Harrison told me is he said, "I think she's afraid of you." And I do too. And I know to a certain degree she was. She showed that just by the respect she gave me, even when I was critical or continued to question her about certain things. She'd always change the subject rather than answer my question usually. But Captain Lowe isn't aware of some of that stuff, and he'll be aware of it. And like I said, it doesn't really matter to me why, whether she was getting back at me or anything. It's not an important part. It's not a relevant piece of evidence or anything. But I thought it was just kind of funny when I heard him say that. He talked about the amount of heroin in his system. Charlie brought that up. I hope Charlie comes back on here pretty
Actually,
quick.
he did get back. I just texted him. He said he was having internet issues and that he didn't think he was going to be able to get back on, unfortunately, tonight.
Okay.
But we'll continue on. We've got a lot of people listening. We got other questions too. I'm sure you want to wrap up that thought. Did you have another part on that?
In the interview, because I did really want to focus as much as I can on Charles' interview with him, but I'll wait for your questions after this last thing. Charles brought up the idea of the amount of dope or heroin in Kurt's system, and I can see that that there's more that he'll learn about that. He wasn't able to respond to that as well as I think he'll be responding to it when he looks into it a little bit more. So go ahead and hit me with some questions from your viewers if you want.
Yeah, we got a lot of questions. So number one, I want to say that we do have a phone number, and so if people want to call in, you can. And you got a question for Tom Grant right now? Open line. It's open 978-560-3155. We're scrolling it on the bottom. You can call in right now. A lot of listeners have been asking about Iggy Pop. I saw recently a video with Iggy Pop, and he seems to be talking about this. but I couldn't really tell if it was real. Like, have you seen that? And other people are talking about Kim Gordon may have said something from Sonic Youth.
Yeah.
Or
Let me.
what do you know about those?
You can add some more in a minute, but I just kind of need to think about the two names that you just mentioned, and I can respond to that. Kim Gordon did an interview in a magazine after the film. Oh gosh, what did he name that film?
Soaked in Bleach.
No, it was done by a very famous director. In fact, he called me before he did the film, and I sent him my case study manual. He did
Kurt and Courtney, that movie.
no. It was the only other one. Ah, gosh, my memory. I want to remember the director and producer's name too. He who are the two young actors that were roommates that have become really famous? Matt.
Ben Affleck and Matt Damon.
Yeah.
They're Boston guys. Of course, I know them.
Right. Okay. Well, the few movies that they started in, I think at least one, well, I know at least one, but maybe two or three of those films were written, directed by him, by this
Gus
guy.
Van Sant. Van Sant.
Yes. Thank you.
Someone just thank the listeners. They put it up, actually.
Okay. Yeah. And it was interesting. He called me, but he was also very honest with me, and he told me that he knew Courtney Love and that they were friends and everything. So, I mean, I'm willing to talk to anybody that's respectful and friendly. And I said, well, that's fine. You know, do you have any questions? And we talked for a while, and I told him I could send him the case study manual, which I did. The movie turned out to be something that just was incredibly stupid.
I've never seen the movie. Is that's they say the audience is saying it's The Last Days.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
That's how much I cared about it because I couldn't remember the name of the movie. But it had no point. It had scenes in there where the Kurt character, who was mostly walking around in his pajamas throughout the house and outside, wandering around, no dialogue or anything from him. And there was one point where he passed in front of the camera where there were bushes behind him, and he just walked in front of the camera, in and out of view. And then the camera focused on some leaves on the bush that he just walked past for this might be an exaggeration, but it seemed for at least like 15 seconds. And I'm thinking, what is the art in that? I mean, this guy's a good filmmaker. You know, I think he's won Oscars or something, or been nominated.
Yeah, he has, for like Private Idaho, a bunch of movies he's been.
Oh yeah. Good Will Hunting.
Exactly. Good Will Hunting.
This was the stupidest movie I've ever seen.
Probably his worst movie, it sounds like.
Yeah. It made no sense. It had no purpose. It had no conclusion. He just put it out there. I don't know. I don't know why he put it out there, other than he wanted to do a shtick or something, and he was Courtney's friend. But
what? Yeah, I think that get it back to the Iggy Pop King Gordon. How does that have to do with it? It has to do with it somehow, right?
Yeah, let me try to remember what the connection was and what got me off on that. Well, I'll just jump back to Kim Gordon. Oh, that's what it was. Kim Gordon appeared in that movie. Okay, so she was interviewed in a magazine after. There was an article about the film, and it was discussed by people, and they were calling it genius and artistic and on like that. But they were friends of Gus Van Sant, I'm sure, that were making those comments. But up in the upper right-hand corner, there was a little strip, like you see in magazine articles a lot of times, and it had a small picture of Kim Gordon. And if I can remember the wording correctly, the wording underneath there said something like, Kurt Cobain committed suicide or was no, I think it said, do you believe Kurt Cobain was killed? And she said, yes, I do. Now, the movie certainly didn't make that point. It didn't really actually even make the point that he committed suicide. It made no point whatsoever. But that was pretty big, and a lot of people were making a big deal about that. That Kim Gordon said that she believed that Kurt was killed, is the way she said it. Now, I don't try to contact people like that. I wait for them. I've just learned it's better to do it that way. And if she's going to make a statement like that and she really believes it, I don't want to pester her. I want her to do her thing and talk to whoever she wants to talk to. And if she wants to talk to me, it's very easy. It's always been easy for people to track me down online. So,
And what about the Iggy Pop one? Because I saw that recently. It seemed like he
Yeah.
was talking about it too.
Yeah, I've seen that and I think that's been around for quite a while. I don't know Iggy Pop. I've never talked to him as an older person and not into that scene. I heard the name and I didn't, but I never knew a whole lot about him. I did watch what he said though, and I do believe he was sincere in what he said, and he was very angry at all the lying and stuff that was going around about Kurt. Period, and it not the lying about whether he committed suicide or was murdered, but just the whole scene. Everybody pretty much was aware that what they were hearing and reading on in the media really was totally inaccurate, and I think that really made Iggy Pop angry. And it's been a while since I've watched that, so I can't recall everything that he said. But that, if I recall correctly, that was his main point. He just said most of what was being printed or written in the media was a bunch of garbage.
All right. Another quick question from somebody that we just had, and then we have someone on the phone too waiting. So DJ Moonshow from YouTube says, can you guys ask if Courtney ever tried to seduce Tom?
Well, that ride out to Carnation, I hate to talk about this because if I'm wrong, there would be a woman, even though it's a woman that I'm not concerned about her opinion, but she would be thinking, good grief, are you kidding me? You old man, why would I care about you? But I know this is the way Courtney operates. So I'll tell this story real quick. And knowing, like I said, that I've seen this in the past with her, and while I was working with her, this type of thing. And I know she likes to get dirt on people. When you get dirt on people, especially in the entertainment industry or in her position and where she was trying to go in the entertainment industry, it helps open doors for you, So on our ride out to Carnation with Kat Jalen in the back seat, at one point, Courtney was being very, very sweet and very nice, just putting on her best show of that kind of, I call it with her and Kat, the baby doll thing, where they're just like sweet teenagers, and that's the way she was talking to me. So she turned to me and she goes, "Tom, are you married?" And I said, no, I'm not. And I think that was a disappointment to her, first of all, because I think if I was married, that was the first indication to me that maybe she was going somewhere with this.
Leverage, yeah, blackmail.
If I was married, this might work really good when we get out to Carnation,
Yeah.
But I wasn't married. And I don't remember a whole lot about that. I just remember some stuff that happened out there while we were in the cabin. And again, I kept getting the feeling that she was trying to set me up. I don't think Kat really realized what was going on at the time. I don't think Kat was in on this or anything, but Courtney might have hinted to Kat about, hey, let's do this or let's do that. I don't know. I mean, that's all pure speculation on my part. You asked the question, so I'm just kind of telling you. I'm not.
No, I could totally see it happening like that too with her. I get the question about the Iggy part, because Iggy really goes even beyond Courtney. Like someone just said on the comment, says Iggy says the people around Kurt, which is correct. This is what this person thinks on YouTube. And then they name David Geffen, Rosemary Carroll, and Danny Goldberg are all complicit, this person says. I've always kind of wondered about that too, like had thoughts on it, but I don't think there's really any proof of it. You got some info from Rosemary Carroll. Where do you go on that? Do you think that it was just Courtney, or do you think that we don't know? Like, what about the other people? Do you think there were other people beyond her little crew of Callie and, some of the other folks we've mentioned tonight? Or do you think
I
it
have,
goes?
I have no
up the chain?
evidence of other people, and logically, I don't see a need for other people. I've never said this was some massive conspiracy that involved, maybe even 10 people. I think it was Courtney and 1, 2, or maybe 3 other people at the most. That's all there needed to be. And if this is going to be done, if you're going to set up a staged suicide, that's all it takes. And why would you get more people involved in it? That just risks the likelihood of getting caught. It hires that level of risk. So, I can always be wrong about things. I've never said that I'm the most brilliant, smartest, or even best investigator in the world, or in the country, or in the state, or in the city. I just did what I had to do, and I reached my conclusions based on what I saw and heard, and a lot of stuff that I haven't brought out in the public yet. But
Have you ever heard anything like, because someone's asking about this too, which is another kind of off topic, but I just like to address them because I think they are kind of salacious. But I wonder, like, because this has come up with the Epstein stuff. Her name is on with the Jets. She hung out with this guy. Like, have you found anything on that too? Like the Jeffrey Epstein, Courtney Love connection?
Well, of course, that surfaced years and years and years after 1994, and I don't get paid for
To continue,
anything
yeah.
I do on this case.
Right.
Well, yeah, I'm not surprised by the connection there, and I believe it's probably there. I believe she probably knew Jeffrey Epstein very well. She probably was at the island from time to time. There's actually some private information that I did learn from a reliable source that leads me to believe that it wouldn't surprise me if she was involved in helping with some trafficking and stuff. So, and we know she was friends with him. I mean, I think there's pictures with her and him together, aren't there?
Yeah, I believe there are.
Yeah.
Another question that came up, someone said, has Courtney ever contacted you in the last couple of years?
No.
No.
The last contact I had with her, one-to-one, was when she called me in January. I think it was January 25th of 1995, and she was in New Zealand, and we were on the phone for a couple hours, and she'd heard a couple of the radio shows I'd been on, and it was just amazing how respectful and how nice she was to me after she heard me on these radio shows accusing her of having her husband murdered. I mean, what's that say?
Right.
If somebody accused me of having my wife murdered, especially if I was a celebrity, I'd be in their face.
Upset,
I'd have attorneys knocking on their doors and people serving them with papers. And you're not going to accuse me of something like that, and I'm just going to sit here and be nice to you,
Yeah. There's also something about Mark Lanigan in his new book, I guess. He said something about it as well, that he was searching the house. Have you heard anything about that?
Yeah, I've heard about that, and I think I could be wrong about this, but I think Mark just it's been a long time, and his memory it has slipped, and he doesn't remember the situation that well. Or maybe, since Dylan knew how to get in the house after he and I went in the house, maybe he took Mark and the two of them went back there. But what he wrote about going in the house in any connection with me and Dylan being there, he wasn't there when we went in the house. The only time Mark Lanigan was with us, we picked him up one afternoon. I think, like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I didn't really know who he was at the time. He just looked like a young kid, but Dylan told me he had his own band and stuff called Screaming Trees, I think.
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it was. Yeah, great band.
Yeah. And but he rode with us for a while because he knew Kurt really well. And so we were going to different places that Kurt hung out, hotels and places like that. And Mark was helping with that. And also part of this plan was I wanted them to go into the drug dealer's house. Good grief, I can't even remember her name after all this time not talking about it. Somebody will probably pop up with her name because it's very well known. I wanted to take them over there to go in. I gave them $200 to go in and buy heroin from her. And Dylan carried a tape recorder with him in his pocket. And the purpose of that was for him to go in and find out if he was there, if Kurt
was there. Yeah.
Courtney kept trying to tell me that's where he was at. And the strange thing about all of this, she was leading me all around to different areas. And every time I talked about going up to the house during the daytime, especially,
She wouldn't let you.
oh no, Callie's there. He'll tell me.
Right. He'll let us know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm doing all these other things, and I gave them $200 to go in there and buy heroin. Again, this is, police officers would do stuff like this too when they're working under
Control by. Yeah.
They'll go in and buy and do what they need to do to get the information they need to get. And I felt a little sleazy about that. I've never given anybody money to buy drugs, especially heroin, before, but this was something that was important enough to be done. So I got the recording back and I heard everything that went on. I heard what it sounds like when people sit down and shoot up heroin. All of them in the house there. I think there were four people, and they all, got some heroin and shot up together. And I don't know, maybe 20 minutes later or so, Dylan and Mark Lanigan came back to the car and got in and said, yeah, he's not there. And I listened to the tape, and I don't believe Dylan would have lied to me. For Dylan to begin with, for Dylan to tell me, oh no, there's no way he's suicidal. He's not suicidal, and he got even upset at the thought of somebody saying that. If he was part of this whole thing and was following Courtney's orders,
yeah, he would have said she was suicidal, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
That would have been the best setup, and it would have probably maybe set me in a different direction if he would have said, yeah, I've been really worried about him. He's been really down, and now he's got this shotgun, and who knows what's going to happen. But no, we're sitting in this little cafe just getting acquainted when I first went up there. One of the first things I said to him, and it's like, no, he's not suicidal. I mean, he's been dealing with some stuff. I don't, with Courtney and all that. I don't know why they even got married. Dylan couldn't understand why Kurt would marry Courtney because they were always fighting. And so I totally trust Dylan, except for the first night we went to the house. Dylan went up the driveway. I sent him up there alone because I didn't want Kurt seeing somebody like me walking up there. And if he didn't see Dylan, and knowing that he had a shotgun for protection up there, I didn't want him firing that shotgun at me, So I sent Dylan up there alone, and I sat out in the car. And Dylan, it took him a long time. I didn't count the minutes, but way longer than it should have taken him to go up there and knock on the door and find out if Kurt was there. So it is, when it comes to Dylan's involvement, I believe he probably during that period of time went up to the greenhouse and saw Kurt laying there. And when he came out, he was just, he was kind of quiet, like he was stunned, but I didn't want to read a whole lot into that. But looking back on everything, I think at the very most, he might have seen Kurt dead in there. And from that point on, as a heroin addict who needed their heroin, he was Courtney's puppet,
Absolutely.
me
Let's
and
take
do
this
whatever
call.
they
We
need.
have someone who's been waiting. I want to see if they're still on the line here. Listener, are you there? No? Did we lose you? Hi, on the phone. Are you on the phone, sir? Or ma'am? I guess they're not there. You know what? Let's try to call them back. I'm going to try to call them back just to see, because we had them waiting for a long time. Actually, they're calling back now. Let's see if this works. Sometimes the phone lines don't work too, so that's the other issue. Listener, you're on the line right now. Let's try this again. Looks like, you know what? Maybe my system went down. It's weird. It was working.
Well, we can continue this at another time and Charlie can get back on with us.
I want to see if we can get it going. Sometimes it just takes a second. There's something not right about this. Let me just 1 second here. What? Yeah, I don't know why, Tom. It's funny. Every time I try to take call today, when you called me, it worked perfect. Remember when you called me earlier?
Yeah.
But for some reason, when I'm live, it never works the first time, and I have to reset it up again. Like, it's so weird. And I'm gonna do that right now. And I guarantee this is exactly what it did. It went offline. No. Wait, hold on. Let me turn it off and turn it back on. This usually works. Because these folks have been waiting. I at least want to let a couple of them. They've been being really patient.
Yeah, and feel free to interrupt if I'm, if you've got people waiting and I'm going into more detail than what everyone needs to hear. So
It looks like we're connected. I'm going to try to call some of them back who been calling. Here's one. We'll take this one. Yeah, I think it's going to work. Hi, you're live on the show. Can you hear us?
Hello.
Hi. See, I told you it always works on the second
Hi.
time. Hi, you got a question for Tom Grant?
I do.
Well, actually, what's your
hi,
name first?
Tom.
What's your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Darla, and I'm calling from the state of Ohio.
Awesome. Dollar, what's your question for Tom? Or comment?
Okay. First of all, I have a couple questions. Number one, first of all, I'm sorry we lost Charlie.
Me too.
And yeah. Now I've watched most of these documentaries about this case, and I keep seeing in this some of the questions that are coming up where they're talking about there was a car that was in the driveway with the tires all being flat, and that there was a man that was in a cab, and it was, I believe, on April 2nd. And I was wondering if Tom knew anything about that.
yeah, well, the cab driver who picked up Kurt from the airport and brought him back to the house and then took him back somewhere to, I guess he left the shells in the cab, the shotgun shells, accidentally, and I think the cab delivered those back to him. So anyhow, the information about the cab being anywhere near the house is probably accurate. Things get kind of twisted a little bit sometimes as they get passed around from one person to another, and but what you're talking about isn't really an item that's like something that would be ever presented in a court of law, and those are the type of things that I focus on. But I'm more than willing to answer questions about other things too. What was the second part there? Besides the cab,
the second part is I was quite surprised that you just said that when when Dylan went up there the first time to look for Kurt, that you think that he may have gone into the greenhouse and seen Kurt and came out and never said anything to you, and that he was quiet after that, and then he became Courtney's kind of I don't know,
Yeah.
whatever you
Slave.
want. Yeah.
Let's call it slave.
Yeah.
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 So why do you think that Dylan wouldn't tell you if that had been the case?
Well, because like I said, Dylan was a heavy, hardcore heroin addict. He was also a really intelligent guy, by the way. He was a right-wing Republican, which might surprise a lot of people, but he was very well read and was very into politics and stuff. But he when he found that Kurt's body, if that's what happened, which I think it was probably, being a heroin addict, he knew immediately, where am I going to get my heroin from now? Dylan was living with his mother and his girlfriend in a small apartment. I went up there at one point and saw where they were living. They didn't have a lot of money, and heroin addicts need a daily source of money, of funds to purchase heroin. And
Right.
Courtney is right there to furnish his heroin for him, and that had to. When you're a heroin addict, that's really all you care about is your next hit. Does that make
So
sense?
do you know whether or not Dylan and Courtney are still friends?
I don't know. I've seen pictures of them, in years past, a long time after 1994. There's a photograph of them standing on a bridge somewhere together. And Dylan has a big handlebar mustache, I think, and a beard, and doesn't look any gray hair, doesn't look anything like I remember him. So I don't know what year that was taken, but they remained friends after that, I'm sure. I'm sure Courtney kept him close. I mean, there was a situation, if you go to the website and you read enough of what I have on there, there was a situation where I was at the house waiting for Dylan to show up the week after Kurt's body was found, and I'd gone back up there, and he ended up in Courtney's bedroom before I found him in. What?
Yeah, he shot up and he came down and he was worthless to you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's another indication that he was at that stage, at that point, right after Kurt died, he had to depend on Courtney for drugs, and Courtney used drugs and drug dependency to manipulate a whole lot of people, including Dylan. But I don't believe that Dylan was used or told about or expected anything about Kurt dying or a plot to kill him or anything. Again, the most obvious thing if he was is to tell me, oh yeah, he's suicidal. Yeah. That would be the most convincing thing for me to start thinking like that.
Thank you so much for calling, Gala. I got a question for you. Did you expect? I know Charlie's been doing this, great work, American Spy Fox. Make sure everyone subscribes to his channel, especially if you're new to him at all from my channel. Love to get him some more subscribers. He does phenomenal work. He's got a good following. But I'm just wondering, did you expect to see a Seattle police captain, a retired Seattle police captain, come out and say some of the things he said recently on American Spy Fox channel?
Yeah.
No, I am blown away by all of this. And I just am hoping that, somebody, opens this up and it gets reinvestigated and, we really truly find out the truth about it. And I think that, just Courtney did so many weird things, you know what I mean? Like after his death, it was, I don't know. It's just a crazy thing. But I do want to ask one more thing, and then I know you want to get me off here. Did you, Tom, ever, did Dave Grohl or Chris Novoselic ever want to speak with you, or did you ever try to reach out to them about what their thoughts were?
No. First of all, keep in mind, I lived in Beverly Hills, and they lived in Washington. So it's not like I was local up there where I could just come and go and knock on doors or make phone calls and say, yeah, I'd like to come over and talk to you, and
Right.
being in their position, if everybody remembers, I don't know if you were all old enough to remember, but Dave and Chris didn't say anything about this for about a year. When anybody would ask him anything,
Yeah, I know.
he didn't want to talk about it. So
Yeah, they really still don't say anything about it.
I'm glad you brought
The
that
only
up.
thing I
Darla.
do,
Yeah, because people have been
Yeah,
asking about it in the comments, like even today. Like Chris has said some things that are like totally negative against this idea. So, I mean, what do you think about that?
well,
Tom.
I think that, Tom.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
Tom.
who made a comment today?
Well, just in general, like Chris Novoselic has made comments
yeah.
more recently, and like it seems like they don't want to hear about it. Like, and they don't believe in it. Chris really thinks he committed suicide. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
When you say there is a difference between what Dave Grohl has done and said and what Chris Novoselic said. Chris is angry. He doesn't from things that he said about this whole thing over the years without naming my name or anything. He just despises me. That's fine. That's his right. I will say that Chris Novoselic is still very good, or was. I don't know. It's been a few years since I saw it, but Chris Novoselic was extremely close to Danny Goldberg. Now, I dealt with Danny's wife. I did have Danny in my office, and we met and talked, but he wasn't willing to really answer any of my questions. So I said, well, there's no use to this conversation. So I said, see you later.
I'm surprised that Chris would have any kind of ill, feelings towards you, because I do know that when Kurt and Courtney went and got married in Hawaii, Chris didn't go. Yeah, I mean Dave did, but I don't even think that that Chris went to any kind of memorial service for Kurt either.
Yeah, I will say Courtney always, when she was talking to me, she was bad mouthing Chris and Dave Grohl. She didn't like them at all. She thought they were making too much money and that Kurt deserved to get a bigger piece of the money and all that. And she was a very aggravating influence on the band. And who was it?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know she was.
Here.
And
was brought in because he was he had been friends with Courtney. That's how he ended up in Nirvana, from my understanding. A lot of this stuff is just things that don't really matter to me because I'm looking at this as from a perspective of what matters if we have something to present in a court of law.
Absolutely.
But
I was just curious as to where your investigation, like if some, because a lot of things I'm sure, you wouldn't talk about, or, like you said, you keep things private if people don't want to know anything. But I just, like I said, Dave nor Chris really has ever approached this, but anyways, I really appreciate you taking my call.
Thank you, darling.
And I hope that this does open up, and Courtney has to, be accountable, or at least be questioned over a lot of these things.
Well, thank you. It was good to hear from you.
Thank you for calling, Darla.
Okay.
All right, we're the Young Jerks, and we've got Tom Grant from CobainCase.com. Check out his website. We're taking phone calls. We got to make the phone calls a little quicker. It's late. We're over 2 hours already. Tom may have to go. So if you have one question, one comment, not 5 questions, 978-560-3155. We may take some more calls real quickly. There's been so many other comments. People want to talk about everything. But I mean, Tom, are the things that you want to talk about tonight that we haven't mentioned? I know there's more American Spy Fox. He talked to one of the cousins, Gary Cobain, about the autopsy. That keeps coming up as a question. I don't know if you want to comment on that tonight. Have you seen that stuff?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. If for people who listened earlier, I made the comment about how an investigation goes, and you start going in one direction, and then you realize, wow. I mean, you're thinking this is really important. We need to get there and follow up on that, and before you even get there, sometimes something else comes up. I don't know what that sound is.
That's me. That's people calling in.
Oh,
The
Hello?
phone ringing off the hook. I mean, caller, we're gonna put you on hold for a second and let Tom finish his thoughts here, and we'll be right back with you.
remind me what my thoughts were.
I know, right? It's hard to
What-
keep track when we get the
What
beeping
was I
going on.
talking? What was I? Where was I going? Oh, the Gary.
Yeah,
Cobain.
Gary Cobain.
Yeah. So before I even really had a chance to address all that, and there is a lot that I can talk about there. There is a history that goes back to right after Leland died. And I'd spoken to Leland on the phone a few times, and I have a handwritten letter from Leland after he got the coroner's report, and he's telling me he wants me to have a copy of it. And then he got really sick and ended up dying. So the question was, what happened to the coroner's report that was there when Gary moved in? Actually, I think Gary moved in before Leland even died. But there's a backstory to that goes way back. It just wasn't really new information for me personally, but Gary had said that he didn't know anything about it. We had people there talking to him. One was an old time friend of Leland's and became a friend of mine, and he was trying to help get the copy, and Gary just kept telling him, I don't have it. I haven't seen it, and now all of a sudden he's coming up and trying to sell it. Personally, I don't see how a copy of that would be of any value to any collector, because for one thing, how would a collector know that it was the real thing? Now, if it was the original autopsy report, I could see that it would have a lot of value.
What about the question that listeners keep asking is about the damage, that the autopsy report, that there were injuries to his body. Do you think that's strange, or is that new? I mean, that seemed new to me. I know there was another story about what happened at the morgue, but
yeah, there's that's why to answer questions like that,
tough for you, right?
Well, no, it would be for me. It would be interesting to me, and it could apply to the work that I've done. But I wouldn't be able to see without looking at the exact drawing illustrations that they're talking about. I know enough about the coroner's report and what it will say that when I do look at it, I'll be able to tell whether it's been manipulated or not, or something added or changed in it. But when and Charlie was right in going in that direction with Gary, but when Captain Lowe came along, that stuff really isn't as important to me as what Captain Lowe can do for
exactly.
Yeah,
that's a more important. We got a caller on the phone. Let's see what they have to say. You have a question or a comment for Tom Grant quickly tonight?
Hi, yes. My name's Lily. I'm in Las Vegas. I just want to say, I mean, you can hear me, right? I can't hear the.
I hear you.
You guys can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yep.
So this call is, 20 years or 20 plus years of passion behind this case, and so much love and so much. Oh man, I don't even know how to start with this. Hold on 1 second. My phone's acting up. Right when I need it.
You're nervous, aren't you? Say your name again. What was your name?
Yeah, my name's Lily from Las Vegas.
Lily from Las Vegas. So take a breath. This is 20 years built up. What? I mean, you might
It's,
just want to
it's,
thank
I mean,
Tom.
what can I say about this kid?
Maybe you just want
I'm
to
sorry?
thank Tom. Maybe you just want to thank him for
No, that's
an
exactly
American
how I
Spy
was going to
Fox.
say it. Honestly, I want to thank first Tom. I hope you can. I cannot thank you enough for everything you have done, all the hours and all the sacrifice, every single little thing you had to deal with all through all these years for, trying to do what you believe is right and true and what, deserves to be looked at. And, unfortunately I was a toddler when it happened. So I can't even be part of, like, what kind of case do I have, going off of, he said, she said stuff. But I mean, Tom, man, I can't thank you enough. Like, the love I have for Kurt, I know has like a big part of it came from you, because you let me see him in a different light, where everyone else portrayed him in a way where it was just, very so not of his character. And it made me really dig deeper to the person he was, or is, I should say, because I think that everything he has done, I mean, we all can be grateful for it. And that's, people will get mad for it, but, I don't have the words to express it. I just want to, like, I always knew I wanted to reach out. I didn't know when to be the perfect time. I know I wanted to make some time and really put some good details and get into the case in detail about it, because he deserves it. He was such a huge impact on music and generation and people as a role model, and especially for youth and young guys who don't have many good role models, I would say, I can think of right now in music. So that's another passion of mine. But I'm just like, beyond what a great father he was and friend and person that he was, like, I'm forever going to be, interested in doing what I can. And the kind of like thing that, since I am, I also want to both thank Charlie, and I'm sorry, I'm new to who's on the phone.
Mike, I'm Mike.
I don't know.
I'm Mike, the Young Jerks. Yeah,
Mike,
yes, Lily. But
Honestly,
I'm
both of
glad that
you,
you're shouting out Charlie, American Spy Fox. Are you a follower of his channel as well, like I am?
He's incredible.
Yeah,
absolutely. He has done something that I kind of wish I did, but it's something I knew will take. Like, in the beginning of like Facebook and MySpace time, I was kind of like copy and pasting. He was murdered and for like hours, like at least 3-4 days of doing that. And I was like, oh my God, that's the commitment to take for something to be looked at, by one person to, it's just the way he's doing it in videos and really collecting it and making it easy for people to, make their own opinions, because like, it's easy to just read what everything's put out there for you. I don't know how to explain, but I don't want to get too much into detail. I just want to really like thank you guys for having this, and when it does come up to come up to face about, she has to face her consequences, and I know it will. And everyone involved, it's just, I don't know. It's,
Let me mention.
I mean, it kind of, everything kind of moves itself out.
Thank you, Lily. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Lily, very much. And let me continue along those lines. There have been several people over the years, including a guy right at the beginning from a foreign country, who contacted me and said, what do you need? And I told him, I mean, we talked a little bit more than that, but that's basically what he was after. And I told him what I'd like. And I wanted to do some video editing, which I was young enough and had the energy to do way back then. And basically, to make a long story short, he paid for and had me pick up a brand new iMac computer with Final Cut Pro, which back then was $1,500. So it was like a $5,000 just from one phone call. So there's people like that all along that have really helped out. And I used to do video editing, but what Charlie's doing right now, he puts like 16 hours
amazing
into just one. How long are his shows normally?
It depends. They all vary, but I mean, sometimes hour plus. He's editing, researching, writing. He's amazing. Charlie is a force.
And I can tell you, just the editing,
Yeah.
can tell
No,
you
that,
that
he can't be right here so we can say hi.
I think we're talking over each other here.
Yeah. I got to turn down. Go ahead, because American Spy Fox's ears are ringing right now.
Okay.
Thank you so much for calling, Lily.
Yes. No, thank you guys 1,000 times. And
Okay.
it's not going to be in vain. And it's definitely going to make a difference. I know it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I'll reach
Lily.
out later.
Appreciate the call.
Oh.
Okay.
All right, we took a lot of calls. I think that's good. Other people are like next caller. I don't think we're gonna have a next caller. I think we're good. Are you good tonight, Tom? Is there anything final thoughts you want to say tonight?
My final thoughts are along the lines, just finishing up there. There's been several people that have contributed a ton. You know, some people that have done projects that cost a ton of money to do. And without that, we wouldn't be where we are. And without Charlie, we wouldn't be where we are. The point that I was kind of trying to follow up with this video editing, it's easy to turn stuff over to somebody else to do, you know, and just kind of direct it and have it done. And if you have the money, especially to do it, and there have been people that have done projects like that I'm very appreciative of, and I don't know where we'd be without it. But Charlie, especially when it comes to this keeping up with YouTube videos and stuff, I started to do that, you know, a few years ago, and I just realized at my age, I don't have the energy to spend that much time, and nowhere near as much time and effort that Charlie puts into the videos that he does.
Seriously.
Plus he's got a good memory. He knows rock press and, you know, the 70s, 80s, 90s music and the bands and all that. I'm not familiar with that. That's not my thing. So it's really great that somebody with his knowledge is able to keep coming back to this Cobain case and have a place for people to listen to and to watch his videos and keep this thing going. You know, I don't know that we would ever have discovered Captain Lowe without
I don't think so.
people that were involved in, and especially Charlie, what he did with it when he did find out.
Exactly. No, they're still calling. I'm going to put this caller on hold, but we're not going to take it right now. Listener, just chill out for a second. Tom, I want to thank you so much for calling in tonight, spending time with us. CobainCase.com is your website. I hope everyone checks it out. And again, I really thank you. It's been over 2 hours and 20 minutes you've been on this call. So thank you so much for being with us tonight, Tom Grant.
Oh, you're very welcome. It was my pleasure. I wish Charlie could have stayed on with us.
I know, but you know what I'm looking forward to is watching the next episode, because everyone's asking for you and Neilo and Charlie for an episode. So hopefully we'll be watching you guys together on an upcoming episode, because I would love to see that on American Spy Fox channel.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm open to going on with Charlie, and I want to be real careful with you know, and dealing with this with Captain Lowe. He's golden.
Yes.
He is just an amazing human being and down to earth, humble, but the most credible person that there could possibly be to come forward and to talk about these things. So
thank you so much, Tom. Have a great night, sir.
Okay, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye now. That was great. Again, we're the Young Jerks. That was Tom Grant we had on. We also had Charlie on. We got this caller. I want to see what they want. If there's a comment, what's going on with the caller? Who's on the line right now?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. What's going on?
Hello?
Yep.
Hey, that's a bummer Tom left, because I wanted to ask him, as far as I remember, the first person to ever interview him about the Cobain case was the hookup guy, Tom Likas, back in the late 90s or mid 90s, maybe. But, and the other thing I wanted to ask is, why the heck is Chris and Dave going along with the official story, especially Chris, you know?
Oh, he did answer that part. I don't know if you heard that.
Oh, I guess I missed it.
He was kind of, you know, basically it comes down to he's friendly with the Goldberg, you know, Danny Goldberg, and he's mad. He's
Okay.
upset about Kurt, you know, killing himself, and so there's some, you know, it's sometimes when you're so close to something too, it's you don't see it the same way other people do. So, but I really appreciate your call.
Yeah,
Where
I
you
suppose,
calling
but
from? Where are you calling from?
Tacoma, Washington.
Oh wow. You know, Charlie just went there, and I've been there once too. I used to manage a band, and we played the Tacoma. I think it was a Showboat was the name of the club, and we were at the Capitol Theater in Olympia, Washington, way back in the day. What do you think? Like, do you follow American Spy Fox? I'm guessing.
Oh yeah, I've been following for a long time, but also following the Cobain case for a long time as well.
Yeah. So are you like a Gen Xer like I am that kind of grew up on this stuff?
I'm on the end of Gen X. I was born in '80,
so you're almost a baby boomer. So you're like, you know, like maybe a little older than me, but
like
right
on the cusp.
Yeah. So
yeah,
do you feel like they still talk about it? Like obviously his impact in the state of Washington is huge, but in Tacoma, do you hear people like think that he was killed, or do they kind of buy that he did himself in? What do you what's kind of the scuttlebutt in Tacoma when you're with your neighbors and your friends?
Well, I would say over the years, most people agree with the official story, and they think I'm crazy when I try to point out all the inconsistencies, you know? So some people are open to it, but most are not. So.
And that area, I mean, it's very interesting when you go there. Like to me, it's, I didn't expect it, you know, it's kind of like rural and run down in a lot of respects. Like, is that kind of still how it is, or has it been gentrified? Like, how is Tacoma and even that area where he grew up, which is Aberdeen, which is even more so, right?
Well, Aberdeen, as far as I know, I haven't been there in a long time, but it's still pretty run down.
Yeah.
And it always has been run down. You know, it's a logging community. But Tacoma is insane crowded compared to
what it used
how
to be.
It was when I was growing up in the 80s, you know?
Yeah.
It's a totally different place because you have all the people from California trying to evacuate California, moving to Tacoma. But
cheaper.
Yeah, a lot of Nirvana history in Tacoma, tons of it.
Right.
Like Kurt and Chris used to live in Tacoma at one time. And yeah.
Very cool. I appreciate your call tonight. I appreciate your call. It's good to get someone from that area.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate the stream, and Tom and American Spy Fox. You guys rock. Keep on doing the good work, man.
Thank you so much. You have a great night.
You as well. Thank you.
And we're the Young Jerks. My name is Mike Crawford. I just want to make sure that people, if you're just coming across this for the first time, make sure you're following American Spy Fox. At American Spy Fox, like one of my favorite YouTubers of all time. For me tonight, I was trying to just kind of stay out of the way, honestly, but like I was excited tonight because I really like American Spy Fox. I've been a fan, and the first time he came on the show, I was really excited because I'm a fan, like all you guys are. Like I've been watching Charlie's videos for years. And I joined his group, his Facebook group. And that's when I hit him up. I was like, dude, would you come on my show? And so it's been great just to have him on, especially to share this news. I hope more YouTubers out there will jump on what he's doing. Like you really have to wake up. Like this guy is not a conspiracy theorist. He's not crazy. He really digs into the facts. I'm an investigator. I've covered a lot of stories in Massachusetts about corruption and crime in the cannabis space, mostly in print back in the day. I wrote for Dig Boston for years. So I got some reporting skills. Let's just put it that way. And he doesn't even consider himself a journalist or whatever, but he really is. And he's your everyday journalist. The guy is tenacious. He's funny. He's got talent. I like him. I really like him a lot. American Spy Fox. Huge props to him. He hooked this whole thing up tonight, set it up for us. We're a smaller channel than him. He's got 53,000 subscribers. He didn't have any issue bringing Tom Grant to our show tonight and doing this. So again, good guy. Love him. Love his content. wicked happy we could have him on tonight. If you're not supporting him, definitely check him out. He's got a Patreon. You should be giving him money. If you love him that much, you should send him $5 every once in a while. I'm pretty sure he collects money on PayPal or Venmo or one of those. So I would send donations his way too. Especially if you've been listening for years, what's just sending him? If you've never sent him a donation before, consider doing that. We also collect donations too. If you'd like to support our show, Cash App Mike Crawford 1 or Venmo Mike Crawford TYJ. We cover a lot of corruption and kind of getting into the true crime area now. We've got a case in Massachusetts that we're kind of following and supporting. There's another guy that's been all over it named Aiden Kearney. He's actually been charged criminally for his reporting and some of the things that he's done recently. So we cover a lot. Definitely follow us, subscribe to us, like us if you haven't done so beforehand. I think you'll find some good content on here. We try to inform people, have conversations. We take phone calls, and we have a good time. So I want to thank everyone who's been listening tonight. We got a lot of new listeners, new viewers. I always say listeners because we started off as just a streaming audio show way back in the day. There was no video content. We didn't even do Facebook or YouTube, and we've transitioned over obviously to that format. So I still say listeners a lot. I should be saying YouTube viewers or whatever you call yourselves. But I want to thank everyone who's been watching and everyone who's been chatting and everyone who's been calling and everyone who's been supporting our show, The Young Jerks, so much. And I want to thank Tom Grant tonight for being here. And again, if you haven't seen the latest from American Spy Fox, check it out. Seattle Captain, you got to check that out, that new interview he's got. And again, that's my Venmo. You can send money that way if you'd like to support us as well. It really does help us with what we do, the cost. There is a cost to StreamYard and some of the other liability. We actually have insurance on our show too. So check that out. But again, I want you to also check out CobainCase.com. That's Tom Grant's website. Support him as well. Again, I want to thank everyone who's been supporting us. And if you want to put the phone number down, put it like 978-560-3155. Put it in your phone. Just say Young Jerks. Put that in your address book because you may be listening later and want to call us and you want to get through before anyone else does. Because I know a lot of times our phone lines light up and we only can take one call at a time. But just do me a favor. Be quick with your question. Be quick with your call. I know some of the listeners, the viewers tonight were complaining about some of the calls being too long, too many questions, not quick enough with the questions. Yeah, I'm from Boston. I know a lot of you New Yorkers as well that were listening want to see things done quickly. I get it. I'm East Coast too. So that's my advice to the callers. If you want to get through on the next show, put our number down. It's always the same, 978-560-3155. Put it in your phone book. Plan to call us in the next show and have your questions ready right away. Again, I want to thank everyone for calling. I want to thank everyone who's been watching. And I want to thank especially the people who have been liking, subscribing, and sharing our content as well as donating. And again, if you haven't done so, American Spy Fox, make sure you subscribe to him. I want to see him get at least to 54,000 after tonight. You know, the guy does so much work. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have done the show tonight. Well, there's no doubt about that. And I don't even think we'd be thinking about it. Tom Grant laid it down decades ago. He got me interested in this, but American Spy Fox has kept it going. He's kept our interest going. He's, shown that there is, over time, the truth is coming out. And a lot of it is American Spy Fox. And I want to make sure that people are sharing, supporting, and definitely check out everything that he's doing. All right, we're out of here. Mike Crawford, Young Jerks. We'll be back again. I'm not sure, but I want to thank everyone who's been part of the show tonight. I also want to thank people who've been contributing on YouTube. I appreciate it more when it's on Venmo or the Cash App because that can't be taken away. I always feel like we are in the YouTube program right now, but we still haven't received any of the earnings. We're still waiting for them. And I just have a funny feeling that they're going to yank the rug away from us because we've had these issues before. because like I said, we do cover cannabis and we have been blocked on some of the platforms for some of our cannabis coverage. So I do appreciate the donations on YouTube, but a much better way is through Venmo or the Cash App. We don't lose any of the donation to a fee. And most importantly, we definitely know that we're going to get that donation, which we don't always know on YouTube the way they run things, or Facebook, because they can definitely pull that away, and it does take time for us to get it. But again, I definitely appreciate it. I just want to read the comment. DVB writes, great stream. American Spy Fox, Mr. Grant, the Young Jerks. Why do you think Chris and Dave go along with the official story? I think we did answer that question tonight. I know that we did ask that to Tom Grant. So I want to really thank you for the comment. And again, remind you that we did answer that comment for you. So if you missed it, definitely do rewind it, and you can hear what Tom had to say about it. But I think it is kind of weird, and I think that you can catch a lot of that info on American Spy Fox as well, especially about Dave. Dave is a very interesting character. It seems like Dave was probably, we know from American Spy Fox that Dave knew Courtney before Kurt did. And some people have even speculated that maybe they even hooked up in the past. It's very strange. But, I think with Chris and Dave, especially with Dave, I think Dave, they're different people. They have different reasons. But I think they do have their reasons. And I think some of it probably does have to do with money. But I think for Chris more than Dave, he gets really emotional about it. And I think that he just believes that that's what happened. Dave, I'm not as sure. I think Dave doesn't really, I think he has more questions actually. So, but I'm speculating. I think that if you want more information on that, American Spy Fox. Again, I want to thank everyone who's been listening, supporting us. We will talk to you real soon. Young Jerks, Mike Crawford checking out. I'm just checking to see if there's any final comments that we should post up here. Let me see. Yeah. Here's a good comment. I think this is a good comment to leave it about Dave, too. This is from B. Elston on YouTube. He says, Dave says in interviews he doesn't even think about Kurt because it's too painful. So we don't know. Well, I don't think we're of a no. And I think it's also something too, like if you come out and say, you know what, I think Courtney killed him. I mean, that's a tough spot for them to be in, especially when no charges have been filed. I bet that they have questions, especially Dave. I think Dave more than Chris actually has questions, but where does he go with those? And when you have that much star power, if you just make a slight move, everyone's talking about it. So the safer thing, obviously. And I think if you look at him too, like he may be managed by some of the same people, so there's those entertainment connections. But again, we're going to go. I really appreciate everyone tonight. Thank you so much for watching, supporting. And again, thank you especially to Tom Grant and American Spy Fox for hooking us up tonight.